I'm here with Mattias Karlsson, who is an open source magician and Azure MVP. And we are talking Azure App Services today, I think. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, you mentioned something about there's a magic word that is Kudu, and I only know that's an African antelope. Really? Yeah. So, talk me through the whole app service Kudu. Like, what is it, and why are you so passionate about it?
Well, I think it's one of the best kept secrets of the apps, because it's the engine behind the whole app services. It was monitors the app sizes, like the deployments, what's running, and it can also be like just knowing it's there can help you debug the whole web application. I think many don't. If they don't aware of it, it will be a hard time to debug. Because do things that you can do snapshot, like you can do like the process to get a memory dump. Mm-hmm. You can check the logs for your deployments if something really goes wrong. Yeah. You want automation all the way, but if something really goes wrong, you need to get the logs, and there are some extra logs there. And it also has things like you can browse the file system, so you can see if the deployment goes wrong. You can see what files are actually there, because even if like the deployment says it went well, it could be something that you build wrong source or something. So you can see are the date stamps there and things like that. And it also has a REST APIs, so you can, as an alternative to the ARM API, where you can do things like just do this like in monitor and inspect the website's health and things like that. So it's
because I've always used FTP to go and look. Oh, my files are there. Is that right? So how do you actually get into the Kudu side of things? How do you do that?
Well, there's two ways. Usually if you go to portal, you will have like a link to it there. Yep. On the left hand side of if you go to an app service. There's also like your Azure website, if you add a prefix of s.sam, it will essentially be the site behind, but then you have to log in with your credentials. Sure. But it will automatically log in you for a portal, so it's really simple. Yeah. Also, if you click on the command line prompt in the Azure portal, it actually launches Kudu behind, so that's what's powering that.
Oh, right.
And also if you do things like in Azure DevOps, when it deploys to an Azure website, it talks to Kudu. It's the Kudu API usually.
How interesting. So you mentioned DevOps, and I know you do stuff with DevOps, you know. It's not like we don't know what people do when we start talking to them, right? So, but how does that actually link the whole thing up? Because now it's called Azure DevOps, where before it was VSTS, or Visual Studio Team Services. So you're saying there is a direct link between the Kudu's engine in the Azure infrastructure and DevOps? Is that kind of how it works? Yeah,
essentially, because if you do a regular build, you have a build pipeline where you build the code and get an artifact, and usually you have a release pipeline after that takes that artifact and deploys it somewhere, like an app service.
Yep, of course.
And then you have like definition tasks, and the first task is usually retrieve that artifact, and then you have the task to deploy to an Azure app service.
Yep.
And if you choose, like the old was like an MS deploy thing when it did the whole old style thing. If you choose a newer version of the deployment tasks, you can actually use things like deploy as package, because essentially you can push a zip file to the app service. And that will essentially do two things. If you choose run from package, it will set an app setting that it should run from package, and it will just push that zip, but it won't unarchive it. It will actually mount your inet pub as a read-only folder, which means deployment will go much faster. So it will just take that artifact, push it to Azure, and it will mount that as a read-only. Your inet, like your VV route or W route, will be from that zip file. So it will get much quicker deployments, and that uses the Kudu zip deployment API in its REST API.
So you're kind of using Kudu whether you want to or not if you go down that route.
Yeah, because it's what does the heartbeat of the app service. It does the monitoring, and so like even ARM talks to that underneath.
Yeah, sure.
So it's sometimes good to know how the sauce is made, because when things doesn't work, it never happens to me, but if it happens, it's like good to know where do I find that and what is deployment, and like I'm being an open source, and I've actually done, I'm a maintainer of the Cake build system, the open source system, and I've written add-ins to talk directly to Kudu and do that kind of deployments from, like if you're not on Azure pipelines, you can do it from like Jenkins or Bitrise or anything, so you can talk directly to that API.
So Cake integrates with Kudu as well?
Yeah, well, I've written an add-in to Cake, which integrates Kudu.
So if you don't know what Cake is?
Well, Cake is an open source build orchestrator tool. So essentially, instead of writing XML like you do MS Build, you write C# to do your build tasks. And one of like the big things with Cake is that it has an add-in ecosystem. And I have done two different add-ins for Kudu. One that you can actually, Kudu is actually a build server too. So if you ship like if you're in your deployment have a .deployment file, it can point to like a batch file or something, and it will execute that on deployment. So you can do stuff afterwards, and that's Kudu on the. So my first add-in was like a Kudu. It was basically to expose that C# API to that environment, and the later add-in was like a Kudu client, which actually like you can talk to the Kudu API and deploy.
Kudu client, get that? That's fantastic.
So that essentially like you still build on some other CI. So you can build on something like AppWare or Bitrise or whatever, but you do deployment to Kudu. And it's really because if you want to get like the credentials for doing that kind of deployment, you just download, like if you go to an app service, you have download like the publishing profile. The login and password to your service will be there. So it can be a good alternative if you're not like, if you're currently running some on-prem things to build, or if you're running TeamCity or something else, you can just like, oh well, I still want to deploy to Azure. You can use that add-in if you have cake scripts or something like that.
Wow, that's a lot more in depth than I was expecting, to be honest. That's really cool. So is there any part of like the app service ecosystem, because I've done app service deployments, like it's kind of, if you're a dev and you do web stuff, it's pretty much like you're going to have to do deployment stuff for app services. Anything else you want to highlight with the app services?
Well, I think that good to know, like even Azure Functions is the same engine behind it. So it's like if you, they hide it in the portal because it's a different UI, but you can get to the old UI. And especially depending on which plan you choose. If you use the consumption plan, which is like you pay per execution, then it's like one. But you can also set up, like if you have a low frequency website, but you have like you need the quick, like you want it to respond quickly, you don't want it to sleep, then you can actually set up to have a regular app service plan hosting a function, and then it will be always on and respond quickly. You will pay more. But for some customers, it's more important to respond quickly. It's not an issue if you have 100,000 requests a second, then you will have instances up. But sometimes you have like a logistics system or something like that where you have like once an hour ping something, but you want it to be quick. Then you can set that up too. And
so you're talking about basically hot and cold starts.
And it can be an issue if you have few requests. With the whole cold start thing, and you can also like mitigate with like setting things like app insights. You can set it to ping your function. So and that's also really important with like the whole. If you tie things together, you can get the whole both API and so app insights is something I think people should really look at there too. Like the whole.
There's so much in Azure, right? So if I were, say I'm a new Azure developer and I want to start with app services, where's the best way? Like where's the best point to get started with all this stuff?
Well, I think anyone has some website they want. So like, just do the portal thing. Just you can even, well, I would never do it, but right-click deployment just to test it. And the right-click deployment will call Kudu and do all the magic for you. And but as soon as you can do that, hook it up to some CI. And the simplest part they have, like if you have something like, oh, my code is a Bitbucket, then you can hook up this built-in to hook up to Bitbucket and build the code there from. But then look at something like it's so easy with pipelines with the whole. I really like the whole thing, but that you have separated, really, like you have a good strategy for build, and that's the responsibility for developers that you get a good working artifact, and you have a separate like release system. Like some other guys could approve that release and it go out, and the whole swim lane thing that I have like development, staging, production, and so I mean the whole thing. But I think that's good stuff. But I mean it's. The really cool part of App Service is that you can choose now to either use Windows or Linux or a container with Linux as a base. So I mean, for some scenarios, it's better to use that. Like they have the container instances that like this simple spring up container. But sometimes it's cheaper to go the app service route. So if you have like something that's just going to be a web service, like an Nginx proxy or something like that. Look at app service, but it can be cheaper because it's made for web traffic, and it's really cheaper. Like Azure, like compute, like the container instances is a compute where you pay for. If it's being home 24/7, you will probably pay more.